Welcome to the Spiritual Download. Today we're talking about Tat Wale Baba, who is the Ageless Yogi. And what do I mean by ageless? You'll see here in a second, but he appeared to be about 35 years old, but then people found out that he was actually 80 years old. So let's figure out how that even happened. So the first thing to note is when you hear things like this that might go against your paradigm of thought of what a human being actually is, you really need to open up your mind first and open up your heart. What I mean by this is, we've been taught in school, by our family, by our friends, as to what a human being actually is. And in this example, this is a perfect example that will show you that you actually don't know the possibilities of what a human being can actually be. And agelessness is a perfect example of this, and that perhaps, before Western history, there were miracles that happened as to how human beings actually lived, because we don't have the recorded history. Anything before 5,000 years ago, you really don't know what happened. So this will change your paradigm of belief about human capabilities. And most of our history, okay, so human beings are what, 2 million years old, or 200,000 years old, but we only know what happened really in the last 2,000, or only the last 1,000, and only in Europe. So anything that happened in the non-Western world, like yoga, we don't know exactly what happened. Uh, Another thing to note is when your heart is open and you're like feeling into a book, or when people are talking to you, you intuitively know if what they're saying is true or real for them. So what I mean for them is they may have experienced things in life that is a miracle, and they actually experienced it and you have not. How do you tell somebody that something miraculous happened to you when they're going to be skeptical about it? Right? We're taught to be rational and scientific about life, because in our culture we believe everything is materialistic. But there's a possibility of things that are not materialistic, especially if you are a superhuman, due to high states of consciousness and practice of anything. Right? Like David Blaine is a magician, for example. That comes from a lot of practice, and perhaps he has some sort of state of consciousness, or maybe he's tapped into some part of the universe, some non-physical part of the universe, like dark matter. I mean, that could be the thing. Is maybe it's dark matter. You have to keep an open heart and an open mind as to what life is actually about. A lot of the information I got came from this free online book. So let's get into this. I'll move my screen a little bit here. So you can see in this picture that this man, Tat Wale Baba, he appears to be about in his 30s or 40s, right? His birth was estimated to be in 1890, and there's reasons as to why or how he was born in 1890. Uh, there's evidence that there was a person that went to school with him, and that would have been about around the 1900. So that would have been put him about 10 years old in the year 1900. And this photo was taken in 1960. So that's just incredible. Again, I'm not saying that this is 100% true from a rational point of view, but when you begin to see that life may be more than meets the eye, that this could be a superhuman. Let me go to the next slide. Excuse me. Right, so Swami Shankar Dasji, was a disciple of Tat Wale Baba. He's a keeper of the ashram that they had. He's also an advanced yogi himself and witnessed a handful of miracles that actually happened to him, which I'll show you later in the lecture, that Tat Wale Baba performed. And he knew about when Tat Wale Baba was born because he knew a man who went to school with him in about 1900. Here is a photo uh, that was taken about 1912. That would have put him at about age 22 at the time. You can already see that he has long dreadlocks and he's just wearing jute. And I looked it up. The jute is a stringy yarn-like material. So imagine that you lived in the woods and you only wore jute. So here's another picture of him. So one of the keys that I gained from studying and reading about Tat Wale Baba is just his serenity and power. It's like a serene, peaceful power. And you can just see this by looking at him. See, if you just look into the photos and you feel in your heart, you can really see the brilliance of the man, even though he hardly spoke. I'll show you a quote that he had during a satsang that proves that he was brilliant himself, but none of that came from study. He was just came from a farming family and just began meditating when he was about 10 years old and moved into the woods, into a cave in his teenage years around the age of 20. His daily routine, so once he did move into the cave, he would meditate for 8 hours in the morning, then he would go forage for food until noon, and then he would eat his meal for the day, then meditate for another 3 or 4 hours, and then he would go hiking for about 2 hours barefoot, and then he would fall asleep around 6 or 7 p.m. So imagine yourself doing this and having this routine. You can't do it. I can't do it. The thing is, it's not. You wouldn't be able to do it in the way that you are now. The thing is we're talking about superhuman consciousness. When you go above and beyond your normal state of consciousness, again, you're going to be kind of living in this miraculous realm of God and infinite intelligence that is with you in your heart and in your body if you are completely tapped into it from every cell in your body, and you dedicate your whole life, right? You're not even worried about your body dying. He obviously lived in some other. His body was a part of some other realm that is not normal just because of his agelessness. I mean, in this photo, he's probably 70 years old, right? And that's crazy to us. But when you admire how he is and how he looks, you could maybe see how it might be possible that if someone had that lifestyle, that they actually would probably stop aging at some point and maybe live to be 150 or 180 years old. Just keep that as a possibility in your mind. Here's another picture of him. Move my screen up to here. So he had many miracles. So one example is he had a pet cobra that was 12 feet long, and he would feed it milk. And theoretically, or reportedly, he talked to the king of the cobras in the area, and so that none of the cobras would bite anybody in the community nearby. That's a whole nother realm where you're able to communicate with animals, communicate with plants. Now, there are people alive today that can do this, but again, they're not in the news. They're not in your textbooks. Your professors don't know about them. These people are probably on the fringes of society, right? Just like Tat Wale Baba, right? People just rarely saw him until his satsang in 1969. Really, he lived in a cave, nobody knew about him, and he was living in some other conscious realm. then the Swami himself, right? I mean, imagine you're talking to a yogi, someone there, and they're animated about a story, and they're telling you that their guru placed a cup on their forehead, and milk poured out of the top of your head into the cup. You drank it, and you were healed from your sickness. And then the guru walked through your locked door, right? You were sick, you're in your room, you locked your door. The guru left, walked through the door. How is that possible? And you can't see it here, but Tat Wale Baba predicted his own death. Right? He said that he was going to be shot by somebody, and you'll see here that that's exactly what happened. Another few miracles is some of the people some people in India came to visit him. They couldn't give birth to children. They were trying, and he was able to um, let them have children eventually. That's another miracle. Another one is two Germans came into his cave to ask him about the truth of the universe, and he clapped his hands like this, and in between his hands came this uh, it was like a map of the universe that was between his hands, um, kind of like a Star Wars kind of thing where they're reading through a hologram or something like that. Again, you don't have to believe all of these, but when the evidence just continues to accumulate of miracles, when you think about the life of Jesus, right, the life of the Buddha, or the life of Tat Wale Baba, when you hear about all of these miracles happening, you have to question in your mind: is it possible that miracles can happen despite living also in this material world? Is there some sort of connection, or is there some sort of realm we could go to in our own consciousness, or we could tap into miracles? So yes, he was shot to death. He predicted his death. Died in 1971 at about the age of 80. This photo was in about 1969 at his satsang, and you can see his dreadlocks were so long that went below his feet that his disciples would carry his dreadlocks for him when walking down the street to the satsang. There's a picture of him during the satsang. This is right here. That's Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the guru of Transcendental Meditation, also known as TM. Traveled back to India to have Tat Wale Baba give a satsang. The author of the book, on the online book that I have linked, attended this satsang. And apparently, so what happened was Tat Wale Baba sat down. They're kind of on the throne looking thing, right? Crossed his legs, closed his eyes, and gave a huge Om. So huge that the author of this book, who was there, was taking photos, but he had to stop taking photos. He just he froze when the Om happened, and he just sat down and admired the man instead of taking photos like Westerners would do, or Japanese tourists would do, and just kind of see it all as oh, I'm gonna get all these likes on Instagram because I'm hanging out with this guru. No, when you're in this larger state of consciousness and you're presented with a human who's literally embodying God consciousness, you're gonna not feel like yourself, so as to stop taking photos or just sit down and kind of be in that new realm of existence. So his quote is, "Infinite happiness can only come from something which could be immortal, non-changing, or eternal." So ask yourself, what for you has never changed, whether I was suffering, happy, asleep, or if you died? What would remain? This which is the goal of everything, this infinite is our own self. So that's what you are. So you are that changelessness. And in order to experience that self, which is the basis of all, again, so yourself is the basis of everything else as well. So we all share in that changeless eternal happiness. We don't have to seek it, right? It's not outside of you. It is, but not only. It's also inside of you. We don't have to search or seek. We don't have to make efforts. Your spiritual practice might be full of efforting, right? So it's here, it's present, and it's everywhere all the time, no matter if you're meditating or if you're at work. So just to finish the lecture here, we have a few photos, just admiring what it would be like to be in the presence of such a human being. And you have all of these other great beings near him, right? But he is the one who is truly, truly, truly embodying the silent, godlike presence. And imagine having dreadlocks that long, right? Where you're just so focused on your own self, your own self with a capital S, your own soul, that your body just becomes a part of God. Your mind, your body, your hair, your whole personal identity becomes one with the whole universe, the consciousness of the universe. And here he is. So just kind of sit there and, like I said, just admire the serenity of the man and the power and the consciousness. That's it.